Welcome back to Everyday AI Made Simple. Grab your drink of choice and let's dive into today's topic.
Everyone is talking about going AI first, but let's be honest, for most companies, it's just not working. Today, we're going to break down exactly why, using some incredible insights from Cassie Kozyrkov, who used to be Google's chief decision scientist. We're going to unpack the huge mindset shifts leaders need to make to close that massive gap between all the AI hype and actual real-world value. So it all starts with this one single, pretty startling number, 95%. This figure has been making the rounds, and for a really good reason. It represents this massive, gaping chasm between what AI promises and the results companies are actually seeing on the ground. And that's what it is. 95% of companies are seeing no measurable return on their investment from generative AI. This is what Cassie Kozyrkov calls the generative AI value gap. And look, it's not just that they aren't getting value, it's that they can't even measure it. And that points to a much deeper, more systemic problem. So this brings us to the core question, right? If this technology is supposed to be so revolutionary, why are so many companies getting it so spectacularly wrong? We're going to unpack that because the answer isn't about better algorithms or more data. It's about a fundamental misunderstanding of what AI actually is and, more importantly, how you manage it. Okay, so let's diagnose the problem. According to Kozyrkov, there are two big reasons companies are failing. The first one is all about culture, and the second is a really critical and very common misreading of the technology itself. So here's the first big mindset shift. As Kozyrkov puts it, innovation demands waste. You've got all these companies saying they want to be innovative, but their culture has absolutely zero tolerance for failure. They're not willing to burn that first pancake. That messy initial attempt that teaches you how to get all the rest of them right. Without that willingness to experiment and to learn from what doesn't work, real innovation is it's impossible. And that brings us to the second problem, which is arguably even more critical, the measurement trap. See, leaders are trying to manage generative AI with a playbook that was designed for a completely different game. With classic machine learning, the goal was super clear. Find the one right answer and minimize objective errors. Think, is this image a cat? Yes or no? But generative AI, it isn't about one right answer. It's about creating endless good ones. And right here, this is the new challenge for leaders. They're experts at optimizing for correctness, but now they face this much harder task of defining and judging subjective value. I mean, what makes one AI-generated email better than another? How do you even begin to measure that? This shift from objective error to subjective value, it requires a whole new management paradigm. And honestly, it's where most companies get completely stuck. Okay, so this whole measurement problem brings us to the absolute core of Kozyrkov's analysis. The term AI first is dangerously vague because it describes two completely different and pretty much incompatible strategies. Understanding this distinction is the key to avoiding disaster. So the first path is individual augmentation. Think of this as AI being your personal productivity tool, like a super-powered advisor where a human is always in the loop. It's pretty low risk and can make individuals incredibly effective. But then there's the second path, automation at scale. Here, you're taking your hands completely off the steering wheel and letting the AI act on its own. The potential impact is enormous, but wow, so are the risks. So here's the crucial point, and you really got to get this. The experience of using AI for personal productivity teaches you all the wrong lessons for deploying it as a large-scale automation system. The ease and the safety of that first path create this false sense of security about the very, very real dangers of the second. And this is exactly what happens when you get it wrong. Kozyrkov gives this perfect and kind of terrifying example of a car dealership chatbot that, if left unchecked, offers to sell a brand new car for just $1. It sounds absurd, right? But it vividly highlights the catastrophic business risk when automation goes completely off the rails without the proper guardrails in place. So, how do you prepare for that difficult but really powerful path of automation? Well, it all starts with building the right foundation. And that foundation isn't what most executives think it is. You see, companies that rush into deployment start racking up what Kozyrkov calls AI infrastructure debt. It's just like technical debt, but for AI. Every single time you cut a corner on safety, on training, or on process, you're taking on debt that compounds with a very, very high interest rate. And it sets you up for a massive failure down the line. So what does a real AI foundation actually look like?
It is not just about GPUs and data pipelines. The most critical components are human-centric. It's about managing user expectations, properly training your staff, building safety nets and human-in-the-loop processes, and having clear plans for measurement and rollbacks. The tech is the easy part. The human systems are the hard part.
This brings us to the third and final mindset shift. To unlock real value from AI, you have to completely reframe the strategic question you're asking. It's a shift from just thinking about tactics to thinking about true transformation. For years, leaders have been asking this totally flawed, technology-first question. How can we sprinkle some of that magic AI dust on our business and just hope for the best? This approach leads directly to that 95% failure rate because it starts with the solution, not the problem. Instead, Kozyrkov proposes a much more powerful strategy-first question. Leaders should be asking, what core business challenge did we always believe was just impossible to solve that AI might now make possible? And that is why that question is so effective. It forces you to stop thinking about just adding a feature and start thinking about fundamentally transforming your business. It connects the power of the technology directly to a deep strategic need, and that ensures that any AI initiative you take on is aimed at creating real, game-changing value. In the end, it really comes down to this brilliant analogy from her. AI is the genie, it's incredibly powerful, but it only grants wishes. So the big takeaway is this: stop being mesmerized by the genie. The real work, the work that creates lasting value, is in carefully crafting your wish, that's your strategy, and painstakingly building the lamp, that's your infrastructure.
Are you or the company you work for actively working on building your lamp? That's a wrap, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Everyday AI Made Simple. If you want more of this type of content, hit subscribe and hit that bell so you'll be notified when I post new content. And if you're interested in getting my free AI prompts or free GPTs, think of them as personal mini agents to use in ChatGPT. You can grab them at everydayaimadesimple.ai. The link is below in the description. Thanks for watching.